I refused to cut off my ex and give up nights of wild parties, so my perfect man packed his bags and left. All men are the same. Why can no one ever be perfect? My romantic history is a cemetery of disappointments. I have dated egocentric artists, workaholic businessmen, immature guys who still lived with their parents at 30. Years of disastrous dates had turned me into an expert on red flags. I knew exactly what I did not want and, by extension, I had built a very clear image in my mind of what I did want. The perfect man. My perfect man was not a Hollywood fantasy, it was a list of reasonable requirements. He had to be kind, intelligent, with a stable career. He had to be attentive, remember the small details. He had to be a good communicator, someone with whom I could talk about everything. And most importantly, he had to be self-confident. He had to understand and accept all facets of my life without feeling threatened. This last part was crucial. After kissing countless frogs, 6 months ago, I finally found my prince. His name is Fernando. From our first date, I knew he was different. He met all the requirements on my list. He is a successful architect. He has an incredible sense of humor and a calmness that soothes me. He truly listens to me when I talk and, most impressively of all, he seemed to accept my life just as it was. I was completely honest with him from the beginning. I told him I had a very close-knit group of friends with whom I partied regularly. I told him I maintained a friendly relationship with my ex-boyfriend, Carlos, one of those rare breakups that evolve into a platonic affection. Fernando did not bat an eye. He told me he thought it was great that I had such a rich social life. He told me that friendship with an ex was a sign of maturity. I felt euphoric for the first time. I did not have to edit myself. I did not have to hide parts of my life so as not to scare a man away. I had found someone who was finally secure and evolved enough to handle a complete woman like me. For 6 months, it has been a dream. He has been perfect, or so I thought, until perfection started to show its cracks. The first few months with Fernando were idyllic. He integrated into my life seamlessly. He went out a couple of times with my group of friends. He was polite, although a bit quiet, in the midst of our chaos. He even met my ex, Carlos, in a chance encounter at a cafe. They shook hands, exchanged a few pleasantries. Everything seemed to be in perfect harmony. But I started to notice little things, small changes in his behavior that I ignored at first. For example, my chats with Carlos. Carlos and I have always talked a lot. We send each other memes, we tell each other our problems, sometimes we talk late into the night. It is a friendship of years. At first, if I was chatting with Carlos while I was with Fernando, he would not say anything. But lately I noticed how his gaze would drift to my phone, how his body would tense up a bit. If I laughed at a message, he would ask with a falsely casual voice, "What is so funny?" Then there were my party nights. At first, when I told him I was going out with my friends, he would smile and tell me to have fun. Now his response was more restrained, a simple "take care." And when I would come home at 3 in the morning, I would sometimes find him awake in the living room with the excuse that he could not sleep. I knew he was waiting for me and his vigil felt less like concern and more like silent surveillance. The situation escalated last week. It was my best friend Sarah's birthday, and the party was at one of those huge clubs that stay open until dawn. I knew it was going to be a long and wild night. Fernando, of course, did not want to come. He said he had to work early the next day. During the party, Carlos, my ex, who is also friends with Sarah, was there. At one point, the DJ played a song we used to love, and we danced together like in the old days. We laughed, we sang at the top of our lungs. It was a fun and nostalgic moment. A mutual friend took a picture of us and uploaded it to Instagram, tagging both of us. In the photo, we were laughing with our arms around each other, innocent. At 4 in the morning, I sent a message to Fernando to tell him I was on my way home. His response was immediate and a single word, "Okay." When I got to the apartment, he was in bed with his back to me, pretending to be asleep. I knew something was very wrong. The atmosphere in the room was icy. The next day, the tension was unbearable. He barely spoke to me. I tried to act as if nothing was wrong, telling him funny anecdotes from the party, but it was like talking to a wall. I, in my mind, had done nothing wrong. I had gone out with my friends. I had danced with a friend. What was the problem? If he was upset, it was because of his own insecurities, not my actions. He was supposed to be the secure man, the one who understood my life. And now, suddenly, he was acting like all the other insecure men I had left behind. Disappointment began to settle in my heart. The facade of his perfection was starting to crumble, revealing the imperfect and jealous man underneath. After a full day of hostile silence, I could not take it anymore. I hated conflict, but I hated unresolved tension even more. That night, I confronted him. I found him in his studio, looking out the window. I asked him what was wrong, why he was treating me with such coldness. I told him that if he had a problem, he had to use his words, like the adult he was supposed to be. He turned to look at me, and on his face there was no anger. There was a deep sadness, a disappointment that completely disarmed me. He told me he had spent the day thinking about us, about our future. He said he loved me, that I was the most incredible woman he had ever met. And then came the but that changed everything. He said, "But I cannot go on like this. I cannot live in a constant state of anxiety, wondering what is happening when you are not here, or feeling like a stranger in my own relationship when you are with your friends." He began to speak with a calmness that terrified me. He described how he felt seeing me constantly chatting with Carlos, how he felt seeing pictures of me hugging my ex in a club at 3 in the morning. He told me it was not about trust, it was about respect. Respect, he said, is making decisions that protect your partner's peace of mind. It is understanding that some friendships, some situations, are simply not compatible with a serious and committed relationship. And then he gave me the conditions, the ultimatum. He said to me in a soft but unwavering voice, "I love you and I want a future with you. But for that to happen, I need 2 things. I need you to cut off communication with Carlos. No more chats, no more calls. A friendship like that is not healthy for us. And I need the wild party nights to end. Going out with your friends is fine, but coming home at dawn and dancing like that with other men is not something I can live with." I stared at him in shock. The words echoed in my head. Cut off Carlos and my party nights. He was not asking for a compromise, he was asking for an amputation. He was asking me to cut off 2 parts of myself that define me, that made me who I'm. I told him it was incredibly unfair. I told him he had met me this way, that he had accepted my life. I reminded him of his own words, that he thought it was mature and great. And his response was the final blow. "Yes," he said. "I accepted it because I was falling in love with you, and I thought that over time, as our relationship became more serious, you would realize on your own that those things no longer fit. I thought you would choose our relationship over those things without me having to ask you, but I was wrong. So now I'm asking you." He was asking me to choose him or a fundamental part of my identity. The perfect man, the man who met all the requirements on my list, had just revealed himself to be just another one. A man with conditions, a man with limits, a man who in the end wanted to change me. The disappointment was so overwhelming that it felt like a betrayal. He was not perfect, nobody was. And that realization, instead of humanizing him, simply broke him in my eyes. I stood there in his studio, processing his ultimatum. The room, which had always seemed to me a sanctuary of calm and creativity, suddenly felt like an interrogation room. And I was the accused. My first reaction was anger, a cold, defensive anger. I said, "So this is it. You present a facade of the perfect, self-confident man for 6 months, and now that I'm completely in love, you reveal your true conditions. It was all a trap." He shook his head, and I could see the pain in his eyes. It is not a trap, it is an evolution. When you meet someone, you accept everything, but when you start to love someone, you start to build a future, and some pieces simply do not fit in that future. I do not want to change you. I want to build a life with a version of you that wants to build a life with me. His words were so reasonable, and that was what infuriated me the most. He was not being a tyrant, he was not shouting, he was stating his feelings, his limits in a calm and adult way. And by doing so, he was forcing me to look at myself, and I did not like what I saw because then I discovered it. I discovered the uncomfortable truth. The problem was not him. The problem was my list, my search for the perfect man. I realized that I was not looking for a partner, I was looking for an accessory, a man who would fit perfectly into the empty spaces of my life, without requiring me to adjust any of my own pieces. I wanted a man who would give me stability, love, and security, but who would ask for nothing in return, who would not require the slightest sacrifice on my part. I wanted him to accept my intimate friendship with my ex, but I would have never accepted him having the same relationship with an ex of his. I wanted him to understand my party nights, but I would have never tolerated him disappearing until 4 in the morning. My perfect man was not a real man. He was an impossible ideal, a being without needs, without insecurities, without his own limits, a man designed to orbit around me without having his own gravity. And Fernando, this good and real man who was standing in front of me, was kindly telling me that he had his own gravity, he had his own needs, and my lifestyle was clashing with them. The confrontation was not against him, it was against my own fantasy, the fantasy that I could have it all without giving up anything. And Fernando, with his reasonable request, had burst that bubble. I told him I needed to think. I left his studio and locked myself in our room. I sat on the bed, the same bed we had shared for months, and I faced the harsh reality. I had spent years looking for a good man, and now that I had found him, I was realizing that maybe I was not the good woman he deserved. I spent 2 days in a state of silent agony, 2 days weighing the choice that Fernando had placed before me. He, for his part, gave me space. He was kind, but distant, awaiting my verdict. A part of me, the part that had that horrible revelation in his studio, knew what the right answer was. I knew that an adult relationship requires compromise, sacrifice. I knew that if I wanted a future with this good man, I had to be willing to let go of parts of my past, to adjust my life to make room for his. For a moment, I was about to give in, to go to his studio and tell him, "You are right, I choose you." But every time I thought about sending that farewell message to Carlos, I felt a pang of loss. He had been in my life long before Fernando. Was it fair to erase a friendship of years for a relationship of months? And every time I thought about giving up my party nights, that explosion of freedom with my friends, I felt like I was suffocating. I felt like I was giving up an essential part of my identity. And slowly, over those 48 hours, my narrative began to change again. Guilt gave way to resentment. Self-awareness transformed into self-justification. Why did I have to be the only one to sacrifice? What was he giving up? Is it not a form of control, however kindly presented, to ask someone to change who their friends are and how they have fun? The perfect man does not ask you to choose. The perfect man loves you so much that your friends become his. The perfect man trusts you so much that your nights of freedom are not a threat, but a celebration of your spirit. The problem is not that I want to have it all. The problem is that he is not man enough to give it to me. His request is not a sign of his limits, it is a sign of his weakness. His insecurities, the ones I thought he had overcome, were simply waiting for the right moment to come out. Last night I gave him my answer. I went in his studio. He looked at me hopefully and I said, I cannot. I cannot stop talking to my friend and I'm not going to stop going out with my friends. That is who I'm. And if you cannot love me like this, then you are not the man I thought you were. I saw the hope die in his eyes, replaced by the same resigned sadness I had seen before. He nodded slowly. I understand, he said. I guess that is it then. And that was it. There was no more discussion. He started packing his things today. So yes, I had been looking for a good man for years, and I thought I had found him, but he turned out to be an imitation, a defective product with a hidden clause. And now I'm back to square one alone. Why? Because I refuse to become half a person to fit into someone else's life. Why can nobody be perfect? Maybe because the perfection I'm looking for does not exist. Or maybe, just maybe, because men today are too weak to love a complete woman. They prefer an edited version, one that is easier to handle. And I'm simply not for sale. Popular comments from Reddit. Anonymous user 1. He did not ask you to give up your identity. He asked you for 2 incredibly reasonable things: to build a future, that you not have an intimate relationship with your ex, and that you not party until dawn. That is not control, those are basic boundaries of an adult relationship. Anonymous user 2, you found a good man and you threw him away because he was not perfect, meaning because he would not let you do absolutely everything you wanted without having any reaction. You are not looking for a partner, you are looking for an unconditional fan who also pays the bills. Protagonist's response, a fan. How insulting. I'm looking for a partner, an equal. And an equal respects the life and friendships you had before he came along. He does not try to prune them to fit into his little garden. He did not want a partner, he wanted a domesticated version of me. Anonymous user 3, the problem is not that nobody is perfect. The problem is that your definition of perfect is someone without their own feelings, needs, or boundaries. You just let go of a guy who communicated his needs to you in a healthy and mature way, and you call him weak. I wish you luck in your search, you are going to need it. Protagonist's response, healthy communication does not include ultimatums. He did not give me a choice, he gave me an order and I do not take orders from anyone. If that leaves me alone, so be it. Better alone than in a cage, no matter how golden it is. Update 1. It has been a month since Fernando left, a month of a freedom that tastes strangely like loneliness. I have done exactly what I told him I would do. I have gone out with my friends, I have talked to Carlos, my ex, as much as I have wanted. I have been myself, unapologetically, but there is an echo in my laughter that was not there before. I read the comments. People call me selfish. They say I let a good man go. It is easy to judge from the outside, where decisions seem like simple black and white equations. But my life is in a gray area. The real test of my decision, the one that has left a bitter taste in my mouth, was the reaction of my supposed friends. I thought they would celebrate my liberation. I thought they would tell me, well done, do not let any man change you. But that was not the case. Last week I organized one of our party nights, the first since the breakup. And it was weird. The energy was not the same. Sarah, my best friend, took me aside in the middle of the night. She was a little drunk, which made her painfully honest. She told me, you know, we all love you. But we liked Fernando, he was good for you. He calmed you down and to be honest, we feel a little guilty, as if we were the reason you broke up. I was stunned. Guilty? I told her it was not her fault, that it had been my decision, a decision of principle. But she continued. Yes, but sometimes we wonder if you are not using it. Us, Carlos, as an excuse not to fully commit. Fernando was a real man, one of those who want to build something. And maybe that scared you. Her words felt like a betrayal. The very people for whom I had sacrificed my relationship were now psychoanalyzing me, implying that I was the problem. And with Carlos, my ex, it is even worse. When I told him that Fernando and I had broken up and that it was partly because of our friendship, he was not happy as a twisted part of me expected. He felt incredibly guilty. Now our conversations are awkward, forced. The ease we had has evaporated. It feels like I'm talking to someone who is afraid that any wrong word could cause another disaster in my life. So here I'm with the freedom I defended so much. But my freedom has poisoned my friendships. My friends look at me with a mixture of pity and judgment. My friendship with my ex is damaged. And Fernando, I found out that he has requested a transfer to his company's office in another city. He is leaving. I was not wrong to defend my identity. I was wrong to think that the people around me were as strong as I was. Fernando was weak for not being able to accept me, and my friends are weak for feeling guilty. It seems I'm surrounded by people who cannot handle a woman who refuses to make compromises, and that, in the end, is the greatest loneliness of all. Final update. 3 months have passed, 3 months since my perfect world was revealed to be a farce with conditions. Fernando is moving next week. I know because his sister sent me a brief and cold message to ask when I could stop by to pick up a couple of boxes with his architecture books that had been left in my storage room. My friendships are still strained. The party nights have become scarce, and when they happen they have a forced air, as if everyone were acting in a play about having fun. The friendship with Carlos is now a shadow of what it was, polite but empty. My freedom feels more and more like an exile every day. Last night, as I was sitting in my living room, surrounded by the silence of the life I had chosen, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated, but I answered. It was him. It was Fernando. His voice sounded distant, as if he were calling from the other side of an ocean. He did not call to argue, nor to apologize, nor to ask me to come back. He called to say goodbye. He told me he was leaving, that he needed a new beginning. And then he said something I never expected. He told me, "I know you think I'm weak, that I could not handle you. And maybe you're right, but I want you to know one thing before I go. The night I gave you the ultimatum, I went home and called my father. I told him the situation, and you know what he told me." There was a pause. I said nothing. He continued. "My father was married to my mother for 40 years. She was a hurricane like you, passionate, social, always surrounded by people. And my father adored her, but he spent 40 years feeling like the second choice. He sacrificed his own needs, his own peace to keep her happy. He died of a heart attack at 65, stressed and exhausted. And my father, before I gave you my answer, told me, 'Son, you love her. But do not become me. Do not spend your life putting out someone else's fires.'" "So no," Fernando said, his voice breaking for the first time. "I'm not leaving you because I'm weak. I'm leaving you because I want to live to be 70. I'm leaving you because my father taught me with his own life that love should not be a constant sacrifice, it should be a refuge. And you, as wonderful as you are not a refuge. You are a beautiful and exhausting storm." And he hung up. I was left with the phone in my hand, his words echoing in my head. The father, the story, the perfect excuse. And I understood. I understood his final narrative. He did not leave me for me. He left me for the ghost of his mother, for the trauma of his father. I was not the problem. I was just a pawn in his unresolved family drama. All my struggle, all my defense of my identity was irrelevant. He was not reacting to me. He was reacting to his own past, to his own inherited fears. So this is the end. He leaves convinced that he has made a brave decision to save himself. And maybe, from his perspective, he has. But from mine, he has done something much simpler. He has used his father's story as the ultimate justification for his own inability to love a strong woman. He is not a hero who has learned a lesson. He is a coward who has found the perfect excuse. And I, once again, have been punished, not for who I'm, but for someone else's demons. Nobody is perfect, right? But some, apparently, prefer to blame their ghosts rather than learn to dance in the rain.